practice, my own practice this morning, a lot of it was loving kindness for our country, you know, um, and for the people, all the people, all the people. Um, so, mm, just settling into your body, and feeling both the sensations in the body and the mood and emotional energy in the body. I'm just trying to let things settle. So we can use the breath as a kind of settling mechanism, letting each exhalation drain out stress, drain out agitation, anger, fear, sadness. This isn't pushing it away, pushing those feelings away. And they might still be there in some form, but just letting them sort of not be running on full tilt. I'm a little bit reminded of the Tibetan Tonglen practice. Not something I ordinarily teach, but worth kind of drawing from the idea of breathing in the pain of others, you could say the greed, hatred, and delusion, and breathing out love, and compassion, kindness. We know and see the suffering around us, the madness, the hatred, the delusion, cries out for healing. And so this practice is really a hero's practice, the willingness to take in that pain, to hold it for others, to help them let go. And we can think of the Buddha's words on loving kindness, radiating kindness over the entire world. There's this sense of breathing out kindness and seeing it radiating outward. And if that gets to be too much, just coming back into your body. not sure if that was 20 minutes. I kind of didn't look at the clock when we started. So if somebody is watching this in the future, and they're wondering what's going on, this is election day 2020. So it's affecting the nature of the class, November 3rd. And I was talking at the end of the, there's a few different things I'm going to talk about this morning, so forgive me for not having a very coherent theme, but I was sort of having this spirited debate with my daughter about patriotism the other night, because, I think the way I ended the last class was talking about my sort of love for America, and my daughter was really, my daughter who was working for the campaign, for the Biden campaign, was saying that she thinks that our system is so flawed that it needs to be torn down and rebuilt again. And my argument was, we've got these amendments, and that's how we do that. And I actually, just a couple months ago, I bought a copy of the Constitution, of this little pocket Constitution that I have by my bed, and every once in a while I'm like, how does the Supreme Court work? What are they're saying about that? And really interesting to read it. I think there's 27 amendments, and some of them are just like weird esoteric things, and some of them are like, world changing. But it occurs to me that in terms of recovery, that the system that allows for amendments is not unlike the 12 steps. It's a system that's saying at its root that we may be flawed, and so we may have to make amends as we go along. And certainly there have been amends made in the Constitution. Of course, the first one, primary one, biggest one, is the slavery, which of course was built into the Constitution. But I know this is not supposed to be a political discussion, but how can it not be today? My daughter was born and raised in Berkeley, California, and went to public school in Berkeley, California, and then went to college at UC Berkeley. And I was probably 65 when I learned that the Electoral College was designed to support slavery, essentially, to give power to the slave states. She was like 16 when she learned that. So she has a very different worldview, right? Like, I grew up with these ideals that are, many of them have been shattered. Anyway, I won't stay on that topic all day. I was lying in bed last night, as I said, not sleeping, and so once in a while thinking about, what the hell am I going to talk about tomorrow, and one of the things that, it just, and I don't know what the dharma of this is, but except it's about impermanence, and that weird way in which, you look forward to a coming event for so long. And I think about this sometimes with a performance, particularly as a musician, where, you're looking forward to a performance, and then there's and it could be for weeks and weeks or months, and then doing it, and the immediacy of that, the reality of it, that is no longer in your mind. And as a kid, it's like looking forward to Christmas, or looking forward to the last day of school, and kind of the way that those times become magical somehow in your mind, this future moment, and then the arriving at it, and the sort of almost disorientation. And I kind of feel that today, this kind of like, okay, like, been thinking about this for so long, and here it is. We the campaign yesterday had an event for just the organizers, of which my daughter is one, and they invited the families of us to watch. And so we got to see Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and their spouses talking to the organizers, and it was very different from the way they talked to the public, and I just was, you know, starting to cry watching it, and it was a weird crying because part of it was this inspiration, but part of it was this fear, you know, this fear that these people are just going to be lost in history, that they're so okay. I thought the most appropriate topic for today is greed, hatred, and delusion. And you know, it could be loving kindness and compassion, you know, take your pick, but you guys know me enough to know that I'm going to probably pick the tough one, the negative sounding one. You know, this was 2 chapters in my book, Living Kindness, were devoted to this topic. And it was really kind of the organizing sort of theme of that book was how the Buddha's teachings on love, much of them were focused on non-hatred and the difference in those two things. The idea of sort of generating this positive quality versus letting go of the negative. And that in terms of the way the Buddha taught and the way he viewed the challenges of the human condition, the letting go was really the more central and consistent theme rather than the cultivating. The you know the kind of understanding is that when we let go of greed, hatred, and delusion, loving kindness and compassion are what's left. And people will kind of say, "Oh, that's your true nature." I was talking about this yesterday, um, actually with Walt Opie, and the problems with that idea. Oh well, you know, if love is what shows up when you let go of hate, then love must be our true nature. And just talking about how that suggests something solid, and that's a dangerous sort of path to go down from Buddhist viewpoint. But you know, one of the chapters in Living Kindness was called "The Greed, Hatred, and Delusion Report," and it's about the way we, uh, well, it's kind of first talking about the reason it's called that is like that's how I'm characterizing the news, like the news reports on greed, hatred, and delusion, and that and the reason I wanted to talk about it that way is to show how universal those things are and how you know that consistently we see them throughout history, that our own time is not unique in terms of greed, hatred, and delusion. Uh, and of course, like anything in history or anything, it comes in waves, right? There's more greed or there's more hatred, there's more delusion at different times. Um, and we've seen that, so many, certain regimes and historical moments have been sort of characterized by incredible levels of hate, like the Holocaust, uh, and really slavery, um, the Inquisition, so you look through history and we find these things. So our time is not unique in the terms of the level of hatred. Instead, in fact, there's the, I mean, in terms of watching human evolution, there's an argument to be made that we uh, are moving away from those things ever so slowly. But bring it back to addiction. These are the energies, the guiding sort of forces in our addiction. There's greed for pleasure, there's aversion to pain, and there's delusion that there's different ways to talk about delusion, but my favorite way to think about it is the delusion that greed and hatred will bring happiness. That we're driven by those things. We're driven by greed because we think we're going to get something from it. We think that we're going to get some resolution to our suffering. We're driven by hatred because we think that getting rid of that is going to solve our problem. So, the teachings, what the Buddha says is that, what we see inside ourselves is what we see outside in the world. And this is the point, to some extent, of talking about this, and seeing that when we point to others and say, oh, well, they are lost in their greed, they're lost in their hatred, that, the Buddhist practice, and indeed the recovery practice, the 12-step practice, is to look inside ourselves and see that we too contain greed, hatred, and delusion. And that, well, it's not so simple as to say, well, everybody has to get, this is the sort of one of those perennial arguments. Do we change the world by all the individuals freeing themselves spiritually, or do we change the world by changing the system so that people will change internally? So that's sort of you have the sort of like socialist communist view that, oh, if we make the world more just, then everybody will become more just or equitable. And then the counter argument being, no, there's always going to be greed, and so people are going to play the system, and it's never going to really be, it's always going to be flawed, which is sort of the argument against the Soviet. Here I am, historical class 1 history. Oh, well, I told you shouldn't have come here today. So I thought, well, I'm also supposedly going through the steps, and it is difficult for me to organize my thoughts around anything right now. So I thought I would pick up the ever reliable Bhikkhu Bodhi and his Noble Eightfold Path to talk about right speech, since right speech is the theme of step 5 in my writing. Step 5 is the step that says that's the step in which we share our inventory, our 4-step inventory, and usually with the sponsor. So it's the admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. But it's that admitting, it's the verbalizing of our inventory that I kind of take as a jumping off point to talk about speech. So I thought I would read just a little bit, because you never need a lot of Bhikkhu Bodhi. A little bit goes a hell of a long way. Where do I want to start? For beings such as animals who live at the pre-verbal level, physical action is of dominant concern. He's kind of talking about karma here. For humans immersed in verbal communication, speech gains the ascendancy. Speech can break lives, create enemies, and start wars. Or it can give wisdom, heal divisions, and create peace. This has always been so. Yet in the modern age, the positive and negative potentials of speech have been vastly multiplied by the tremendous increase in the means, speed, and range of communications. The capacity for verbal expression, oral and written, has often been regarded as the distinguishing mark of the human species. From this, we can appreciate the need to make this capacity the means to human excellence, rather than, as too often has been the case, the sign of human degradation. I mean, shit, like that just like nails it so hard. And I read that this morning and I thought, okay, I got to look at the copyright page, 1984. I mean, I'm not talking about Orwell here, just the fact that that is 36 years ago. And it sounds like it was written on the New York Times op-ed page today, doesn't it? In the modern age, the positive and negative potentials of speech have been vastly multiplied by the tremendous increase in the means, speed, and range of communications. This is, 10 years, years before the internet, it's like, oh, Bhikkhu Bodhi is a wise man. But it also really points to how we didn't just arrive here, we've been creating this world. It's been a long time we've been creating this world. Yeah. So if you want to say something, go ahead. I'm gonna show you some graphics just for fun. Get a little bit of what do you say? Entertainment going here. Geez, I can't get the image to be the right size though. That's annoying. I want to show you the cover to my new book. This isn't meant to be marketing. It's just excuse me. Oh God. There we go. I think that'll work. So we're going to redo the, this will be the basic graphic. I'm going to share my screen for you. This will be the basic graphic, but I think the text will be slightly different. Yeah, there you go. Can you see that?
Yes.
So it's interesting. So this was designed by the guy who designed the cover for my last book, and we talked about keeping it very simple. And I had sort of said, oh, I don't want Buddha images, but he came up with this, partial thing. And then someone told me, oh, in Thailand, they don't really consider it proper to show like a partial Buddha. And so I wrote to Ajahn Pasano yesterday and said, I sent him because there's 5 of these. There's a full and these are 5 different potential covers. All of them beautiful in my mind, but I sent him this, and Ajahn Pasano wrote back and said, well, I agree with you. That's the most beautiful one. That's one I like too, which was great. And he said, yes, it's true that traditionally in Thailand that would be inappropriate, but I think that, things have loosened up somewhat in Thailand. And then he said, but at the end of the day, somebody's going to criticize you no matter what you put on your cover. So just choose the one you like. I was like, yay, thank you, Ajahn Pasano. So anyway, there's something. So this has been a long project. It'll taken me longer to write this book than any of them. It's been 2.5 years. And the editing process has been very slow. The person I've been working with hasn't had enough time to get it done quickly. But I just decided the other day that I have to publish this by January 1st. So I'm bearing down on getting this done. And I was reading it yesterday, and what strikes me, it's a strange book because it's like every page is a separate day, and it's not just a little quote, it's like a whole text, a whole teaching for each day. And I created a monster for myself. But as I was reading it, I read through about 20 different days, and I thought, Well, all of these are good, but some of them are really good. Like some of them are like, oh yeah, that's okay, that's okay. And then you kind of get like, oh, I got to mark that page. I hope that you guys find that. I mean, I don't usually blow my own horn a whole lot, but I think there's certain things where I kind of like, because I had to come up with 366 different topics. And sometimes I would like have an inspiration, you know. Sometimes I would just be like, all right, I got to write something for this day. And so, but some of them are like, whoa, that's really good. So I'm looking forward to getting it out to people. So there you go. Now I'm in a better mood. I don't know if anybody's mood has been changing much these days, right? Like, oh God. So my 82-year-old Republican brother, who's not voting for the current president, talked to him yesterday and he was like, I think I'm just kind of depressed. I'm like, no, he's not the type. Yeah, I'm feeling kind of depressed. Yeah. So is the rest of the world. And he had coronavirus. He survived. So anyway, personal stories. So somebody say something. There's 15 minutes left. Get me going. Come on.
Okay, I'll say something.
Great.
Hi,
Hi,
Kevin.
Ann. Hi, Ann.
It's great to see you. So good
You
to be
too.
here. I've missed a few Fridays, which is interesting, to be away from Friday nights. Anyway, it struck me this morning at some point. I was sitting quietly. I wasn't meditating, but I was just sitting quietly, and it just dawned on me how I'm so wrapped up in this outcome. And, you know, and we happened to be reading in the Sunday night a meeting that the story on acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
it used to be called Dr. Alcoholic Addict, and now it's acceptance something in the fourth edition. But anyway, I got very emotional, and then I went out and voted, and I just gave it away to whatever. Just said, okay, I did what I can do, felt good about it. It was the most organized polling situation I've ever experienced in my life. Was it like sanitizers everywhere, and people were ushering you here and there, and it was not crowded at all.
Right.
Anyway, and that meditation, I really got a sense of radiating kindness across the country to people who are voting today, to people who are sitting around in meetings, in Washington or wherever, trying to manipulate or, doing whatever. It was so helpful to me to breathe out, kindness and compassion everywhere from California across the land. And just thanks for that.
Yeah. It is a challenge for us, if you think of yourself as a Buddhist, like what's the wise response, and
Yeah, what is the wise response?
I mean, the idea of the greed, hatred, and delusion report is to help us detach, from the um, this particular moment and see it through this lens of Dharma, right? That, oh, this is how humans have been for thousands of years. I mean, the fact that the Buddha talked about greed, hatred, and delusion, and that he actually, as you know, like consulted with kings and about whether they should go to war. I mean, he was involved in all that, but at the same time, clearly he had this other view, and I think it's really important for us, both for our sanity and for our spiritual growth, to be able to hold these two different views. The view that the Dharma view, which is that this is just impermanent, events arising and falling, as Westminster says, it's not so bad if America stops being an empire, because look at Rome, it just became Italy, and which I thought that was a good line, maybe not, maybe it doesn't have legs, but everything is changing, and we can have that, and at the same time, there's this risk of becoming dissociated, really, right? Like spiritual bypass, like, oh, nothing matters, everything is empty, so don't vote or whatever, or it doesn't matter. But I'm definitely, as you can see, way far over on the, the uh, side of relative reality of the suffering, of my own suffering and the world's suffering, that's coming about through great hatred and delusion. And so yeah, I mean, I have to keep that perspective too, like, and even in the course of our lifetime, to think of like, oh well, I remember one of the few really sort of profound things that I remember my father saying to me was, as he was getting older, I'm not afraid of dying, he said. There's nothing that I'm concerned about with death. I just would like to see how things work out for my children, how their lives play out. And I mean, that was very touching, and it stayed with me, obviously. But I also see it as sort of a perennial human wish to know, well, what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen then? Like, what's going to happen with climate change? What's going to happen? And to know that, like, at some point I'm just going to die, and things are going to go on happening, like, and things are going to go on changing, and wars are going to happen, and people are going to be elected, or countries are going to fall, and I'm not going to be around, and it gives a very different sort of perspective on being attached.
Yeah.
That I really don't. It's like, it's not really my business what's going to happen, in 50 years, because I'm not going to be participating. Weird. I don't know. This is just such a random brain state for me this morning.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, I just, thinking about what's going on right now in our country, how do we work on becoming less attached to our opinions?
Are you seriously asking me that, Jim?
Well, you're the expert on this,
Oh,
right?
shut up. Don't mute yourself like that when I'm
from a Buddhist perspective.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is that you have to want to let go of your opinions, or you have to have some willingness to let go of your opinions. And but I guess, Jim, what I think it's really important to separate views and opinions, things that are just attachments, that are conditioned, biased attachments, from discerning wisdom.
Mm.
And if we have the Dharma as our guide, I think we can come up with there are basic principles, love versus hate, right? Letting go versus clinging. And so I don't think that saying that making a decision like, I really think that this candidate is going to be better for our country, I mean, obviously that becomes so complicated in terms of dependent origination and all the factors involved, but just sort of selecting between two, that you can kind of go, well, which one seems to be cultivating love and compassion, and which one is cultivating more greed and hatred. And that's not then based on political principles, it's based on moral principles. What do you think about that?
Well, I just wonder how there's healing out of this whole division and situation, and
Right.
and love really is the answer.
Yeah.
I just not when you read the news, you don't see a lot of love right now.
I actually see a lot of love out of Biden, frankly.
too.
He's an incredibly loving person. But, I mean, what occurs to me right now is how powerful the negative impact has been from this one person. How much hatred, it's always there, right? We accept that greed, hatred, and delusion are qualities that we all walk around with. But we can see also that there are ways in which certain very powerful individuals can, really stir up one or the other. I mean, Hitler clearly was able to stir up this hatred in Germany that was, there. We know there was hatred of Jews in Germany, as there have been all over the world, time, since there was, Judaism. But, those things get cultivated. It's what we're cultivating. It's not like, oh, we're going to elect this person and then everything's going to be fine. We all know that's not true. But we're cultivating. And just as like when we sit down to meditate, we know we're going to sit down and we're going to deal with our own greed, hatred, and delusion, but we're going to be trying to cultivate loving kindness and wisdom. So it's not like, oh, it's going to be perfect, but it's like we keep, writing more amendments to our own mind, creating amendments for our mind and our heart. But I think it is striking how powerful one individual is. We, particularly, we don't have a king, we don't have an emperor in this country, and yet we've just seen how this one person has had such a powerful impact. And I think that speaks to the power of leadership. That famous story that Thich Nhat Hanh has, I'm sure you've heard it, of the boat people coming out of Vietnam, escaping from Vietnam. And he said that if everybody on the boat was panicking, but there was one person who kept their head, that one person could save the boat. That that one person standing up and saying, no, calm, let's everybody breathe, we're going to be okay. Don't panic. That one person was able to save that whole boatload of people, and, leadership is incredibly powerful. It's just really interesting. The Buddha, I mean, when you think about human history, one of the things I talked about in Living Kindness is that the people that are best remembered in human history, and not just best remembered, but are thought of day after day after day, are the Buddha, Jesus Christ, and Muhammad. Those are probably the people in human history that are thought of most in the world. And maybe there are some others you can think of, but they're the religious leaders, people who put out ideas that inspired people, that still inspire people, that are still guiding us. I mean, how powerful is that? Those are just single individual people whose ideas are carried by billions, generation after generation. Whew. So that's the hope, right? That's the hope. because that is love. That is love. That's what every one of them is preaching. That's at the heart of their teaching is love. I mean, it's such a cliche and it seems so simplistic, you know, but what the hell else is going to work, you know? Laws don't do anything if there's no love, you know. Armies don't accomplish anything if there's no love. They destroy a lot, but nothing is improved, you know. The war to bring peace, right? That delusion, you know? So it really is. I mean, this is the challenge. I mean, this is what we are faced with as individuals, as addicts, as people on a spiritual path, as Buddhists. It's what the world is faced with. And it's, you know, same as it ever was, right? It's been with humans throughout history, you know. So love has to win. That's all I can say. Love has to win. So, my dears, I will be here on Friday. I like the people who are putting in nice quotes. Justice is what love looks like in public. Cornell West, that's great. Thank you. Can I read a couple more of these? I've set an alarm to come back in 100 years. Oh, yeah. Okay. Good luck with that. Thanks, Ted. The Dalai Lama said he believed. We have come to this life to love and be loved. Thank you. Yeah. All right, dear. So Friday night, we'll see where we are. No golf this week. I'm just for you to know how serious this is. So thank you. Thanks for showing up for yourselves and for me, frankly. Yeah. Have a great day.